Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melisa Liberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Today, I'm so happy to welcome back LeAnne Lagasse. Did I say your name correctly, LeAnne?
Yeah, you did.
I always second guess myself. So happy to have you here. You were on episode 71. We were just looking it up. July of 2022, and you're back again. I'm so happy to have you here. You and I keep in touch, and you've been working on so many exciting projects in your business. So I thought it would be so helpful for other consultants to hear what you've been working on so they can consider applying it to their business. So thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me, Melisa. I'm so excited to be back.
Amazing. Well, give us a little intro. What do you do as a consultant?
Yes. So I'm an independent consultant and a speaker and an executive coach. And I really specialize in helping organizations improve their employee engagement and retention through developing their leaders and their people managers. So I offer, various services around equipping managers and leaders. Also do some HR, kind of traditional HR consulting around engagement and retention. So I do a lot. But that's my favorite, honestly, one of my favorite parts of being an independent consultant is that I get to say yes to that and no to this. And so I can kind of pick and choose the offerings that I have based on what honestly fills my cup the most at any given time.
That's amazing. Well, one of the reasons why I was hoping you would come on the podcast and you graciously said yes is that you've been working on a book. And so many of us as consultants have that on our bucket list, and you're at the finish line here, or at least the biggest milestone, which is releasing it. So tell us a little bit about the book. What's the title? What's the background of how you got to this point? Give us a little bit of that story.
Yes. Okay. Well, first off, it still feels very surreal that I feel like I'm making it all up somehow, that it's really happening, because I have been working on it for so long. But thank you so much for asking. Yeah. So the book is called The Congruent Leader, and it's really a book about how to help leaders close the gap between how they see themselves and how their people experience them. So I wrote the book really as an overflow out of a lot of the coaching work that I do, a lot of the obviously consulting and the speaking and training work that I do, because, there's so many leadership books out there, so many great leadership books that I still use and have benefited from, so greatly in my own leadership journey and in my consulting work. But I think, this book for me fills a little bit of a gap that I never had a resource I felt to give to leaders who were feeling very discouraged or stuck or even just confused about, why am I not getting the outcomes that I want to get? I'm working hard. I care about this. I feel like I'm spinning my wheels and I'm not getting the outcomes that I want. And it has been my experience that for a lot of those leaders, the missing piece really is kind of blind spots around how they're perceived, or, a gap between their intentions and their impact. And so this book is one that, I wrote because it didn't really exist. And that's terrifying, but it's also been really, really exciting. So I've been working on it for over a year, and it is no joke, my friends, but it's been so rewarding. And I'm so deeply grateful to have gone through the process, and so excited to see the kind of impact that it has, not only for the leaders that I have just the privilege and the joy of serving, but also for my business. So we'll see. Jury's still out, I guess. We'll see.
Well, it's hot on the presses, basically, because as of the time that this episode is going live, it will have been released a couple days ago, right? October 7th.
October 7th. Ready or not. Yeah.
Yeah. So The Congruent Leader, we'll put the link in the show notes. But tell us, you touched on this a little bit, but tell us more about why did you do this to yourself? Knowing what it's like to go through this process. I asked that question in that specific way on purpose. Why did you do this to yourself?
Oh my goodness. Well, first off, Melissa, when you sent over the notes beforehand and I saw that question, it cracked me up because one, it was just very you. It was just a very Melisa Liberman way to ask a question. But it's so right. If you've written a book, or honestly, if you've ever worked on something, maybe it's not a book, but just a huge initiative or a project, it feels, like I'm having a baby a little bit. I told a couple of my friends, I said, I'm more nervous about this than I was having my actual babies, I don't know what that says. But yeah, this for me has been it's been something I've wanted to do. It's been on my kind of business bucket list for a long time. I've been doing consulting and speaking and training part-time since 2016 and then full-time since 2019. I was a professor before I jumped full-time into consulting and training. And so I was very used to developing content and, lectures and slide decks and writing blogs and, all sorts of content. But I always thought I would love to build a framework that is really my own intellectual property. Because I come from a higher ed background, I was so used to doing a lot of equipping and teaching and training on other people's theories and concepts. And I still am a big believer in that. I'm just kind of a nerd at heart. And so I'm always going to want to take the research to the people, but I've always wanted to sort of create something that was mine, my unique framework. Of course, I'm borrowing on the research and the work of so many people, but something that was mine. I've wanted to do that for a long time, but you know how it is when you're in this when you choose to work in this kind of space, it's you're wearing 500 hats. And it always felt just very out of reach for me to honestly, to find the time to margin for it. And so I kept kind of kicking the can down the road, but I would go to, for example, conferences. I present at a lot of conferences and, HR conferences or business conferences. And people would come up after my sessions and say, oh, do you have a book in the bookstore? And I was like, no, I got some blogs you can read, or I got some video content. And I am proud of that content, by the way, but I always sort of was one of the only speakers that didn't have something in the bookstore. And so it was on my shame to-do list, as I call it. It's probably not a healthy way to look at that, but that's just how my brain works. So I always wanted to do it and finally decided to kind of just hit the ground running. Really the summer, like last summer, I decided, let's go ahead and do this because I think I just realized I will never slow down enough to feel good about this. It's just kind of not in my nature. So if I'm being self-aware, which is really what the whole book is about, then I'm going to have to just go and make it work. And so I did. And I feel, it took a lot longer than I thought it would because I'm so used to just like go crank something out. And it took a lot longer than I thought it would. But I am very proud of how I navigated through the process.
It's amazing. So was there a specific tipping point, or it sounds like the thought process, I mean, it was always there, right? At least since I've known you, this has been something you've talked about. So like what was that exact tipping point, or what caused you to rip off the Band-Aid? Do you remember?
So, I don't know if I can pinpoint a very specific tipping point. It was more a slow burn or like a slow build of just feeling like I have so much that I want to teach and so much that I want to share. And I want to be able to create something that could help people who are in the kind of position that I'm in with a lot of my clients, because as you know, when you're in this kind of space, you don't get to work one-on-one with everybody that you would love to help. It's just not feasible. We don't have the time, there's there's not enough margin. And so I thought I really would like to be able to take a lot of this content that I saw help my clients, but to a broader audience. So it was sort of slow building. And then I don't know how I'm going to go ahead and share this because it's just the truth. But the other thing that happened was that maybe was kind of a tipping point is I encountered a book that was written by another speaker. And when I read it, I'm so prone to kind of imposter syndrome for myself. And I think we actually talked about that the last time I was on a podcast, but I'm very prone to be very critical of myself and just convinced that what I have to say is not valuable sometimes. Like I really have to fight to have a better perspective than that. And I read this book from this other speaker who, by the way, is a phenomenal speaker, and I know delivers just incredible value to his audience. But I read the book and I kind of went, well, I mean, I could do that, you know? And I hope that doesn't sound disparaging. But it was for me a very pivotal moment where I thought, okay, I've sort of
Mm,
hyped this thing up to be
mm,
more intense, and like I've got to be what I'm going to try to be Brene Brown. No, like
right.
I'm that's not me. That's not what this will probably be. I'm not going to maybe sell 1 million copies of this thing, but I can take what I know and put it in this format and hopefully have it help people. So again, I hope that doesn't sound
Uh,
disparaging, but it was more of like, oh, okay, well, I know him
yeah.
and I can do this too. And that was kind of a tipping point for me, perhaps.
Yeah, which is great, right? It makes it maybe made it more relatable to you than like all of a sudden it feels that one little thing helps make it feel more realistic, and you were off to the races.
Yeah,
uh,
something
uh,
like that. Yeah.
Something I like that. I don't know if that's a good way to describe it, but we'll dig into that more detail now.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit. Let's back into this. What is your
Mhm.
ultimate goal? What is the job? I love to ask the question this way. What is the job you've given this book in your business? What are you hoping that it creates for you and for the business?
Well, you're using all your best tricks, all your best coaching tricks. Yes. So the job that I have for this book is I want it to create more visibility,
Mm,
more of a platform, again, that is my intellectual property that's unique to me. I want it to create more visibility for me. And I want it to be a platform that leads to more speaking engagements,
mm,
more workshop facilitations, kind of custom programs built around the framework.
mm.
So I've been telling people I really don't anticipate selling 1 million copies of this thing. You know, I really don't. And now if I did, that'd be awesome. But to me, success is not necessarily measured in like the volume of sales that I have. It's really the impact that it has on my business and on the speaking opportunities and the consulting opportunities that I get. And what I'm hoping is that it will elevate me to a point where I'm able to speak on bigger stages and have, more kind of robust opportunities than maybe I've had up to this point. Now, if I sell a copy or two, and I will, but
Yeah.
that's awesome too. But for me, it really is more a strategic business decision about
Mm.
visibility and branding and my own framework.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I could imagine in the future licensing that or
Mhm.
somehow training other consultants in this framework. Not to jump ahead too far, but
Yeah.
have you
Oh,
been
I'm
thinking
already
about that?
there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm already thinking
Yeah.
about this is the stuff I'm
Yes.
currently adding to my shame to-do list, Melissa, that I have to
Amazing.
be careful about. Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to see that next iteration. Okay, so now that we know the big picture, walk us through the steps. Like,
Mhm.
how did the last year look, and what does it take to write a book and get it out into the world?
Well, I told I had a conversation actually this morning with my full-time employee and then my designer who I hired to help me with all of this. And I said, I do feel like I've got a lot of decision fatigue
Mm,
around it because it is so many decisions, not only just in how you're writing and what you're emphasizing and not, but then the whole kind of the publishing machine and the marketing and the promotion machine. It's so many decisions. So when I finally decided, let's do this, the smartest thing that I did was I said, as it turns out, know zero things about writing a book like this.
mhm,
I've created content forever,
yeah,
but not content like this. And so very quickly I started researching some, book kind of coaches and
mm,
editors who could help me. I did due diligence. I had several calls just to see who am I vibing with and
yeah,
who seems to kind of match my goals and has done work like this. And so I hired a book coach and kind of content and developmental editor. Shout out to Deb. She's awesome. She helped me tremendously and was very measured in the way that she delivered feedback to me about what I was putting out there. Because one of the challenging parts of this is I, as a speaker and a trainer and a coach, I know that this content works well in workshops and in speaking and in one-on-one, coaching sessions,
Yeah.
but it's a totally different communication channel to put it in a book.
Mm.
And so, I was taking all of this content and going, is this going to work in a book format?
Yeah.
And so having someone there to guide me through that process and help me with the outlining and the kind of adding story and illustration around a lot of the things I've been teaching forever, that was very helpful. It took me from, I think I started writing in August of last year and I finished at the end of April. And so I know people do things different ways. I think you just said like you hold yourself up and just like cranked it out,
Yeah. Yeah.
I had to go, I had to kind of do a slow drip
Mm.
approach
Yeah.
because that was just what was going to work for me. And so I had a lot of help with, keeping like from Deb, keeping
Mm.
myself on track and margining time for it and those sorts of things. So hired her. That was a very good decision. Spent that whole, from again, August to April writing it. And then again, then you think, oh, so I wrote the thing. Check. Wrong. No,
Wrong.
no, you don't get to check it off yet, because then you have to really start thinking about a lot of the creative decisions and the
Mm.
branding piece, and that was very exciting, but also a little overwhelming because you just, again, if I make a slide deck, I always, for a presentation, I always have the ability to, edit and
Mm.
maximize it and go, this didn't work, or this, I need to pull this out. And you can't really do that in the same way with this kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so it was like we were making decisions that had a lot of implications. And so I also hired a book designer and someone who kind of helps with the launch side of things and knows all the back end. And that was another probably pretty smart thing that I did because it can be really overwhelming if you don't know how to navigate it and if you've never done it before.
Yeah.
So picked up with her. She's amazing. Her name's Becky. Picked up with her towards the end of April, and she and I are like thick as
Mm.
thieves. We're working together all the time. Again, I was just on a call with her this morning. So those are two, I think, big parts of the process. And then I did hire a proofreader, kind of someone
Mm.
like like an
Right.
objective person who didn't help me with the whole process, that was looking at it for the first time to see the things that we missed. And that was another valuable thing that I did. So I do feel like I made some investments, but for me, they have been very worth it.
Oh yeah, I can't. We use a slightly different model in developing our two books. Mine was more of a one-stop shop where all of those things were amassed, and there's certainly, I think, pros and cons to those options. But for you, it sounds like you found the right people at the right time for the right job, and it's coming together so nicely. Tell us a little bit about, is it self-published? Is it published with an indie or a traditional publisher? How did you decide which path to go with that?
Yes. Okay. Well, I am going to answer this question with the full disclosure that I still don't feel like I completely understand the
Mm.
landscape that is the publishing space. It's one of the benefits of having someone to help me is I'm like, I don't have to think too much about all of
Yeah.
that. But when I started, I would get on a call with one person who would say like, oh, you got to do traditional publishing and
Mm.
here's why. And then I get on another and, oh, you got to do self-publishing and here's why. And what I ended up doing was sort of how it was described to me was kind of hybrid,
Mm.
toward sort of in the middle of both of those approaches, pros and cons to all of them.
Yeah.
But what I started kind of spotting patterns in the data was people like me, who our goal again was not necessarily to sell, like we're going to sell 1 million copies of this thing, but this is a strategic business tool for us. That people who went the self-publishing or the hybrid-ish publishing model tended to be happier with the outcomes. And again, I do not presume to be an expert on this, but from what I've heard from other speakers that I consulted with and those that went the traditional route that said, I lost a little bit of creative control and freedom. I didn't have as much say in some of the decisions that mattered to me for my
Right.
business. And that was kind of a hill that I wanted to die on a little bit, was to retain as much of that as I could, and kind of my own creative control and the business control part of it. And so what I decided to do was to go with this model where, yes, it's self-publishing. So I did create, I had to created a LLC that's like tech. So technically I have now you know, um, my own publishing company,
Yeah.
which, sounds like
Amazing.
something I would do to myself, but really that's not a big deal. That was honestly the easiest part of the whole thing. But so I am technically, there's a self-publishing component, but in the partnership that I have with a lot of these indie kind of publishers, that
Mm,
there will be books in actual bookstores as a result of that.
mm.
And depending on how things go, I have more opportunities to get into bookstores and retail spaces, and so we'll see how it
Yeah.
goes.
It kind of gives you that flexibility. Again,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an expert in it either, but I know one of the areas people told me to investigate is whether you're giving up your intellectual property
Yep.
when you're going with a uh, traditional publisher, which is definitely not anything any of us want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And the benefit, I think, of, the traditional publishing route, one thing I did hear is, oh, you just have this, you benefit from the machine that is promoting for you. And you do have a lot of resources, and you may have to spend less time on a lot of the stuff that for me has kind of
Mm,
eaten my lunch a little bit over the last several months, gearing up for the promotion and the marketing of it. But for me, the trade off, to your point, is I would much rather maintain the control and it be my content and get to make
yeah.
those decisions myself. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Both going to get this question if I don't ask it, which is, are you willing to share the links and information of Deb and Becky?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I cannot, I just, well, and my editor, my proofreader, I'll add
Oh,
Vanessa as well.
amazing.
She's amazing. Yes, I will definitely share all of their info with you. They're wonderful. And one of the things I've loved the most about each one of these women is that I felt truly like they cared
Mm,
deeply about the message that I was trying to get out into the world and the way I wanted to do it. And they saw me, is the
yeah.
only way I know how to say that.
Yeah.
And were very kind to sort of help me when I was, you know, uh, dealing with the decision fatigue, or when I when I was not understanding how, all these pieces were going to work together. So yes, I would love to share their contact with
Okay,
you.
amazing. We'll put all of those links in the show notes so you don't have to message either of us to get the secret sauce that LeAnne that LeAnne has found. Tell us, what you've touched on this in different ways, but what has been harder than you imagined or unexpected in this journey?
Yeah. So the two biggest things, I think, one I mentioned already, which is because I'm a speaker and I
Mm,
write, this sounds weird, but I write for the ear usually instead of
mm,
the eye. I used
interesting.
to teach my public speaking when I was a professor. I taught public speaking, and I would tell my students, sometimes the very best writers are not great at writing speech content because they're writing for the eye, not the ear. And then vice versa. Sometimes the best speakers really struggle with kind of a traditional, written language because we're writing for the ear instead of the eye. So that was a hard part for me, was figuring out, does this content work in this
Mm,
format? And, I'm a teacher.
yeah.
What I didn't want is I didn't want it to read like a textbook,
Mm,
because I could write a textbook, but that really wasn't what I wanted to do. So I wanted to make sure that I allowed for who I am to come through, which is I am a research nerd. Like, I was a professor. I do care a lot about the theory and the research, and that's how I do my work with my clients on a regular basis. So I wanted that there, but I also
mm.
didn't want it to read again like some boring peer-reviewed journal article or something that, someone's trying to read. So that was tricky. But here's what I will say has been the hardest part, and that is the emotional and psychological part of this, which I was not anticipating, because when you're a speaker and you're a consultant and you're a coach, you're kind of used to putting yourself out there and with your ideas and being vulnerable. And but in most of those cases, you have the benefit of like quick feedback. So if I'm in if I'm presenting to an audience and I can sense like, okay, something about this isn't landing, I can ask a really good question to figure out where am I missing something and how do I adjust, or where is there a disconnect? Or if you're in a coaching session, you can do the same thing and you can pivot and adjust to the uniqueness of the person. And you're getting that, you have that feedback loop. Well, with this, I've been writing this thing since last August. And aside from the wonderful, Deb and Becky and Vanessa, it was kind of like other people weren't giving me feedback about it. And so I kind of went, from time to time, I go a little dark about that, I'm in this kind of void where I'm not getting good feedback to know, is this working? Is this going to land? And so it has been, I think scared is an accurate word to say. Like, I have been very nervous and scared about how it will be received. And, I have part of what I've had to do is, get together a launch team. And, my Becky said to me, okay, you need to get 100 of your supporters, and it's so funny because you're like, oh, 100. Okay, sure. And then you start really putting it together. And like, that's a lot of people.
Yes.
So, but I think I landed with I have 104 on my, launch team. And these are people who, are, yes, family and friends who love and support me, my clients who love and support me, people that I have on my email list who were like, yes, sign me up for your launch team. So I've got over 100 people, but they hadn't seen anything, so I told my husband, I said, if I can get 10, this is just a very random arbitrary number. If I can get 10 strangers who don't know and love me already to read it and say, hey, this was helpful, then I will be like, okay, I'm good. I'm good now. But that has been the hardest part, is sort of the fear and the anxiety about, is it going to be helpful? Is it going to work? And then another sub kind of, this is how my brain works. The sub kind of fear that I have is, I don't want to harm people, and I think I have read books in the past that, as well-intentioned as they were, really caused me some, and that's my own mindset. That's not to blame, an author, but that has caused me to really start doubting myself, or to hold myself to a standard that I wasn't going to be able to meet. And the last thing that I want to do is write something that causes someone to lose confidence, as opposed to gaining the tools to grow in self-awareness and confidence. And this is a tricky subject, because the whole premise of this book is, hey, guess what, leader? You don't see yourself as clearly as you think you do.
Yeah.
And so how do I do that in a way that speaks truth and is kind of unflinching, but is also kind and compassionate? That's a hard line to walk. And so I've been anxious a little bit about that. So that's a long answer. But those have been the hardest parts for me, for sure.
And back to your point about, you can express it so differently when you're speaking, right? You can make a joke, you can see the reaction, and you have no idea who's reading it. So once you put it out there, so that's such a mental test. I think most of the process of writing a book, once you've got some unique perspective to share, is such a mental game.
Oh,
a mental and emotional game. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. But I've learned so much, and I've grown a lot. And I, what I'm struggling with most right now is that I feel like I'm not celebrating it enough or something. People are like, are you going to, what are you doing to celebrate? And I'm like, I'm looking at my to-do list for next week. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. But it was funny. Becky actually asked me, probably one of the first times we met, she said, and she's my designer and kind of book launch help. And she said, when is your book launch party? And I said, I'm sorry, what? And she said, when is your book launch party? I said, I'm not going to do that. And I said, do I have to do that? And she said, no, you don't have to. Some authors don't, but a lot do. And I said, that makes me want to crawl under a desk and hide, so I am doing it my way, which pros and cons to that. But But there is this kind of little sense in me of, I know this is a big deal.
Yeah.
And I'm not the best at celebrating my successes. And so I'm trying to figure out a way to do that a little bit more, especially to appease the people in my life who are like, LeAnne, you should celebrate this,
Right.
So I'm
Right.
working on that.
Well, we're celebrating you for sure. This is a huge milestone. I didn't give you a heads up on this question, but it's something I'm hoping you'll answer for us, which is, how did AI come into play here?
Oh, amazing question. Okay, so AI, I used AI quite a bit in terms of helping me edit and refine things. So
Mm,
I am kind of a purist in the sense that I wanted to write something that was authentically me. And the good thing for me is I did have a ton of content through
mm,
workshops and lectures. So
yeah.
like a lot of the content I already had, I just had to figure out how to put it in, this book form. But
Yeah.
the way I use ChatGPT specifically was like, let's say I write a section and then I might put it in, to ChatGPT and say, okay, what would my ideal reader, like how might they
Mm,
read this section? What questions might they have? What
mm,
impressions might they have? And of course, I had prompted it before. This is who I'm writing for. This is the top. Like, so I'd given it a lot of prompts, and that was so helpful because it would say like, "Oh, here's some things that your ideal reader might be thinking or feeling, or questions they might have, or oh, maybe you should mention something about this or put a
mm,
kind of disclaimer here." And, a lot of those things were things that maybe I had just overlooked in my own content creation. And so that was super, super
wow.
helpful.
Yeah.
I used it a lot in that way. Or sometimes I would put in like a story that I might tell. So, okay, this was a pro tip. This is one thing I did on my using ChatGPT. I would turn on like the audio. I don't know what the official term is for it, but where I'm
Mm,
just talking to it as opposed to
yes.
like typing. And I would say, okay, I'm going to tell you this story. This is a story I tell in workshops all the time,
Oh, yeah.
right? And so I would tell a story and then say, can you help me put this into, a more concise
Mm,
story that like in a written format.
right.
And now what I never did was sort of just copy and paste those things. But what would happen is it would take my just rambling of the story as I might tell it in a workshop, put it in a format that would make more sense for a book, and then I could go in and go, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to tweak this, I'm going to move this here, I'm going to move this here. And so I used it for that a lot. and
Mm,
then and then okay, this is funny because I've already told you I do tend to shame spiral a little bit and be hard on myself. So I would put something in there, and then, as I was building the book, and then go, okay, give me a 3-star review for this book. Like
mm,
I want to know what somebody who said like, it was fine, it was average, what might they say? And then, okay, what might a person who says this was a 5-star, what might they say? And a person who says this is the worst leadership book I've ever read, what might they say? So essentially, I was asking kind of to get a sense of different types of feedback. And what was so helpful about that is I ask it specifically, write me like a really kind of critical review of this.
mm,
Like, what would someone say that was really bad? And
mm,
the major themes that it came up with was, one, it said, this is not a book with a lot of directives, like
mm,
leadership directives, or do this, don't do this. Like, it's not a
mm.
checklist book, right? Which a lot of leadership books are. And when I saw that, I thought, okay, I can live with that, because that wasn't why I wrote this book. Is I didn't
Right.
really write it because there's so many leadership books out there that are do this, don't do that. Great stuff, again, that I still give to my clients all the time. And so what I didn't write it to be a checklist book. I wrote it to help leaders reflect on who they are and how they're showing up. And it's a very introspective writing. It's not just like directive writing. So I thought, okay, I can live with that. And then the other critique, the biggest critique it had, was it said, this feels like too personal,
Mm,
like the content, and
mm,
not me being personal, but because the book has reflection questions throughout it. It's very like there's a lot of unpacking to do about who you are as a person. And so it feels like too personal for me to want to do. And I thought, okay, but that's actually what I think leaders need to do, is to
right.
go deep with that stuff. So I can live with that. And then the third thing it said was, that it's not a quick read. Like it's not a
Mm,
book that you could read just on an airplane,
right.
on a layover or on a layover or something. It's something that really does require you to move methodically through it.
Mm,
And I thought I can live with that, because I do think that the best outcomes we get in our leadership is when we dig and when we do the hard work, and that takes time.
yeah.
So it was funny because I'd ask it for all these critical things, and what it ended up doing was really just encourage me. Okay, I think I'm writing for who I want to write for, and yeah, there are probably going to be people who it doesn't resonate with them, but they're probably not the person that was going to benefit from what I was trying to do anyway.
No.
So it was kind of helpful. So that's, again, a long answer, but
Oh,
I used AI for those kinds of things, and I'm
yeah.
so grateful for the tool because it helped me tremendously.
Yeah. Oh, you're making me want to write another book because when I was writing, really, it was just kind of helping you write things, which I never wanted to use because remember back in the day, which was probably like a year ago, it would say things like in the realm of,
Hmm.
and it would just be so obvious that it had been written by AI. Now it's come so far so quickly. Those tools, I'm such a techie. It makes me want to. Now you're starting. I know you're inspiring people who are listening, and you're inspiring me too. I love it. Thank
Oh my
you.
goodness. Okay, I do have to say one more thing about this. Like,
Yes.
this is another
Yes.
hill that I want to die on. Is I hate how, because ChatGPT in particular uses my very favorite punctuation, the M dash.
Oh, the M
I
dash.
have written, listen, I have used the M dash for eternity past,
Oh,
in my work. And I think I was telling my editor this. I said, the reason that I have always used that is because it's a tool that helps you write like we speak. It's like a
yes.
speaker.
Yeah.
And it's so with that M dash, in the middle of a sentence, for me, like I have always used the M dash. And so now,
Mhm.
especially, I've heard people like, oh, that's a dead giveaway that you're using AI. And I'm like, is
Right.
it? No,
Oh
it's
no.
not.
It's
So I did,
backfiring.
my editor was wonderful. And she was like, okay, you can keep some of them, LeAnne,
Yeah.
but we're going to pull out some others. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But yeah, so if you read it and you see the M dash, like LeAnne's been using that M dash for eternity past,
Before ChatGPT or
before
Claude.
ChatGPT.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're the original. Yes. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I didn't really use it at all. I would use it a little bit just to try check grammar or that, or ask questions about punctuation. I feel like at this point I wrote my book on a typewriter. It's like, it's like the equivalent. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing those tips because that's such a powerful way to use those tools and to get that feedback. And like you said, I love the fact that it gave you these whatever 1-star reviews or 3-star reviews that actually reaffirmed you were on
Yeah.
the right path. That's amazing.
Yeah, they weren't saying things like "you're a terrible writer." so, so that was like, okay, I'm on the right track. The biggest critiques are going to be this wasn't a good fit for me
Yeah.
and that actually is helpful for me,
Yeah,
to know
that's right.
that.
That's right. What advice would you give independent consultants who are thinking about writing a book?
Yeah. So number one is to know why. To your point earlier,
Yeah.
what's the purpose of it? Two, I think know your strengths, and that's kind of my whole thing. I'm very big on that's a big part of the book is knowing your strengths. Know your strengths. Know the places in the process where it's probably going to come to you more naturally. Ease, excellence, and enjoyment. So like I remember my editor saying, oh, the outline part is the hardest part for most
Mhm.
people. And I was like, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's not going to be for me because I am an outline gal. Like, and I've been
Mhm.
delivering, building content for so long that that part lowers my stress thinking about
Yeah.
that. So you know your strengths, know the parts where you're going to bring a lot of energy and the parts that are going to be very draining for you, and then partner with people. So
Yeah.
for me, hiring people, and I do feel very fortunate that I'm at the point in my business where I have the financial margin to invest in this. And I realize not everybody does. And so I feel really grateful for that. I would say if if you have the ability to make an investment in some of those partners, I cannot fathom going through the process without help.
No way.
So find some people who know what they're doing And don't also be discouraged by, I remember the first couple of proposals I got back from
Mm,
people, and these are, I'm sure, wonderful
mm.
people. But I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Like if you think I've got 25 grand laying around
Yeah.
for a book coach, like I don't.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so I would say keep looking for
Yeah.
people that fit your margin and fit, the budget that you have.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would say is to approach it like an experiment. That helped me a lot. Is if I adopted something else I read about in the book, for imagine that, but writing from the perspective of, this is about my learning as much as it is my readers learning, and approaching it with like putting on like my researcher hat and kind of my like experiment hat
Yeah.
helped me not to be as critical of myself through the process. And I still struggle with that. So I think having space to unpack truly how you're feeling and thinking about it is very important. And I've benefited from, my partners big time with
Yeah.
respect to that. So that'd be what I would say.
Yeah. And I might add it to your point about being able to invest in a coach or in the type of team that you found. This is something that what I see with consultants that have a book dream versus one who's brought it to reality are the ones who have invested in a coach or editors or proofread, all the things designers, all of those things, whether it's kind of like I did all in one or you found different contractors, but being able even just for the accountability of it, like I just paid this person a lot of money. I'm going to go do this now, like to the commitment. So if you don't have the money right now, I would highly recommend you figure out, okay, how am I going to generate an extra 10K or 20K this year to fund my book project, and really fund that part of your budget to, because of the return on investment that you're describing, right? It ends up paying for itself over and over again, not in the royalties, but in the doors that get open to clients.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It for me, it took some financial margin for me.
Yeah.
Nothing compared, I think,
Yeah.
to some other models, but for me, it's been so worth it. Honestly, to have a lot of the mental load
Mm,
taken out of the process too. Like I have decision fatigue from all the decisions, but what I haven't had to do is also learn every tiny little step along the way. I've
mm.
had someone there to guide me, and highly recommend.
Highly recommend. Yes. Okay. Now I'm going to be a little greedy. I there's some other things that I know of going on in your business. So while you're here, I'm hoping that you'll share some other insights with the listeners. And those are two areas that I want to focus in on. Number one, your ability to generate a pipeline and really have more demand than you can personally fill. I want to talk about that. And then also you have mentioned about your full-time employee assistant. So I know that a lot of us have questions about that too. So
Let's
if
do
you're
it.
game, let's talk about these things. So let's start with being a sought after consultant. Tell us about that journey. How have you gotten to the point, and what do you think has made a difference for you to get to the point where you've got really more demand than you can handle
Yeah.
most of the time?
It's an interesting question to answer because I can only speak from, what I've done and then kind of what the
Mm,
outcomes are. But sometimes I go, I don't know, like what was the magical piece of it that
yeah.
led to the success or led to being sought after. But here's what I am confident of is one, that from day one, I have been very serious about putting thought leadership out on a
Mm,
very regular basis. So I have an email list that I nurture every week. I send content to them. I create videos for them. I create downloads and resources, Melissa, just very similar to the kinds of things that you're doing to serve your clients well or potential clients well, right? So I have been very, very serious about like the consistency there, building thought leadership so that those pieces of content that I build, they they like outlive me in a lot of ways. Like they're always working for me.
Yeah.
And I'll get sometimes, an email or a consult call that'll come through and somebody will say, "I saw one of your YouTube videos," and I'm like, "Okay, my hair is like this short in that video. That was filmed like 7 years ago," but somehow they found this piece of content that I made forever. I hadn't thought about that in forever, and it's kind of still working for me. And then I think when you do that, when you're passionate about creating that kind of content, people begin to feel like they know you and they like you and they trust you
Mm,
and they know what you're about and they know what your approach is. So I think for me, the biggest piece has just been consistent content creation. And then the other part of this for me is, I think, in terms of being sought after, and I know it's very cliche, but so much of my business is repeat business.
mm,
And I think that is my heart to kind of personalize, to build relationships with my clients. I've always been a person that is interested in like the uniqueness of people. And this is why I'm writing a book about self-awareness, but I'm very interested in people feeling very seen and known. And I think that that has served me well because people will come back to me and sometimes they'll say, "Hey, we have this problem. Can you fix it?" And I'll
mm.
say, "Oh, no, actually, that's not a problem I solve, but I have a partner that I can help you, that can help solve that problem." And that act alone builds trust and
Yeah.
relationship with people. And so I think it's the content creation, if I had to say content
Yeah.
creation, and that I think my clients would tell you that I care about them uniquely as people, and I
Yeah.
want them to be successful and look successful, in their roles. And so I think that's the two biggest things. And
Yeah.
then if I did have to add a third thing, I would say, that it you do have to show up and deliver with excellence. And here's
Mm,
what I mean is that I have seen a lot of, especially speakers, like consultants slash speakers, who maybe they have great systems in place, like they've got a good funnel.
mm,
They're attracting people because of their credentials or their expertise, and they've got kind of a good business model set up. And then they show up and they actually did not put in the time
mm.
to build a presentation or a pitch deck or whatever to
Right.
be exceptional. And they took the business for granted. Like they
Mm,
landed the deal and then they didn't show up and deliver it with excellence.
yeah.
And so I think that is the other thing I would say is that making the sale is one thing, but if you show up and you're winging it, you
Yeah.
know, like you're not going to build a solid reputation.
No. No. I'm curious, when you think about being sought after, how did you or how do you continuously get clear about what it is you want to be sought after for? And
Mm.
how do you make sure that's communicated to the right clients
Yeah. So it's
in this?
funny you say that because just this morning, Maggie, who's my team member, we were just having a conversation about some changes that we've got to make to my website as a result of the book
Mm,
launch. Like we've
mm,
got to reiterate, we've got to adjust some of the language, we've got to speak to this audience that I'm, further kind of even niching down more. We've got to
yeah.
adjust the language. So I think that's part of it is, are you sending messages through whatever channel you're using that
Mm,
resonate with the pain points of the people you want to serve, the problems that you want to solve? To me, that's a big part of it. The other thing with being sought after that I have found is the very best compliment to me ever is when somebody calls me or puts a consult call in and says, "Oh, my friend so and so brought you in to speak a few months ago
mm,
and sent me your info and said you were awesome, or great." Like
right.
to me, sought after means your name is coming up in rooms that you're not
Mm,
in, and people are finding you through referrals. To me, that has been the biggest marker, I think, where I've gone, yeah, I think people are finding me because of hopefully the reputation that I've built. Yeah.
yeah. What do you put in place, LeAnne, to keep in touch with those clients, or to, what kind of systems do you have in place that keeps those relationships nurtured?
Yeah. Well, I wish that I could say, oh, it's all super organic, but it's not. It's
Yeah.
strategic because I value it. I build
Mm-hmm.
systems around it. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I use project management software called ClickUp.
Mm.
And,
Yeah.
there's a lot of great tools out there. I've used Asana and, I've used other things, and I like ClickUp. So I use that. So I have workflows for different kinds of projects, whether it's speaking or consulting or coaching. And part of those workflows is checking in. So for example, just a couple of days ago, we, followed up with some of my coaching clients that I'd wrapped up with within like the last 3 months. And I had it just pop up on my ClickUp. Like, I'm going to check
Mm.
in with Carol today. I'm going to check in with Tiffany today and send them a quick email. It takes me 2 minutes to do that. But then I got an email back from one of them that was like 6 paragraphs long. Like, this is everything that's going on. And that pumps me up, but it also means that she values the relationship.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I then stay kind of top of mind for her too, which is a
Yeah.
strategic business decision. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's systems in place for a lot
Yeah.
of that.
Yes, I thought there would be. So I wanted sometimes they say, don't ask a question you don't know the answer to.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So, okay, let's talk about your assistant now. Tell us a little bit more about that assistant, and then we'll wrap up. But
Oh my
I know
goodness.
you've had a couple of amazing assistants in your business, and you're really good at hiring and training. So give us a little bit of insight into how you think about, number one, why do you have an employee versus a contractor? How do you think about that? And then how do you find them?
Yeah. So when I first launched kind of the second iteration of my business in 2021, which that's wild that was that long ago. But back
Yeah.
in 2021, when I did that, I was at first just doing everything myself. I'd kind of scale down because I was in a business partnership before, so I was doing everything myself, and very quickly,
Yeah.
I was losing my ever loving mind. Trying to do everything. And so at first I thought, okay, I'm just going to hire someone to do 5, maybe 10 hours a week. So I was able, just frankly, by the grace of God alone, I was able to locate someone who was just amazing. Her name is Viv. She rolled off just this year.
Mm.
She just got married and she's living her very best life in
Amazing.
Oklahoma. But she was first just working kind of 5 or 10 hours. And I mean, I know that where this is going is, I was like, oh my word, 5 or 10 hours back has created more than just 5 or 10 hours for me. And because of, again, the mental load. So
Yeah.
slowly we worked Viv up to, where she was full time. And then she decided, to get married and sail away, off into the sunset. And that's been great for her. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. I'm so
Amazing.
happy for her. But, so when I knew I had to replace her, she and I worked very strategically together to make sure that
Mm.
we put a job description together that didn't just speak to sort of the competencies that we wanted, but was going to speak to kind of role alignment and strengths
Mm.
alignment. What kind of person would thrive in this role? Not just like their
Mhm.
knowledge or skill, but what kind of person would thrive here? And that's how we recruited. That's how we, interviewed. That's how we hired, and that works. That's what I advocate for my
Yeah.
clients too.
Yeah.
And so I've had a lot of success, going, I can teach someone systems and I can
Mm.
teach someone skills if they've got something there to start with, that's a good foundation.
Yeah.
But this is a weird world that we're in. This is,
Yeah.
it's a weird,
Yeah.
and you really need someone who has a lot of initiative, takes a lot of work, takes a lot of pride in their work,
Mm.
but also has some adaptability about them that can pivot to just the weirdness of what we do.
Yeah.
And so I do think it's crafting job descriptions, interviewing through kind of a strengths-based alignment
Mm.
lens. And that's been the biggest difference for me. And my new team member, Maggie, just blew me away from the very beginning with her talents and her strengths. And once she's gotten reps in, I mean,
Mm.
now we're just rolling. And I miss Viv terribly. That was my previous assistant, but my business has not skipped a beat because of the systems and the rhythms and that we've spent time building. So
Yeah.
that's the other part of it, is when you've got good systems, it makes hiring and training and onboarding so much easier.
Yeah, that's right. And repeatable, where you had so much of that documented, and now Maggie could take over from Viv and assist you in a more strategic way, I would imagine, versus more of the in addition to the execution side.
Oh, 100%, 100%. Do you have time? Do I have time to tell one tiny story
Yes,
about
please.
this? Okay. So when I was interviewing for Maggie's position, I had like 70 something people apply, which was wild to me, because I wasn't posting it on like LinkedIn, or, I mean, it was just grassroots, and that many people applied. So I had so many talented people apply, and it was frankly very overwhelming, but so when we narrowed it down to kind of the finalists that we had, and I had interviewed them, I gave them a writing assignment, because part of this is, can you help me write, but in my voice? That's hard. You're not just writing for a product, that you're selling. It's a person and a brand. And so that's honestly a sticking point, is, can this person write in someone else's voice? So I gave them the three of them, and they were all so experienced, so wonderful. Honestly, I could have hired any one of them and they would have been fantastic in this role. Right. But I asked them to put together a couple of social media posts and a blog. And I paid them for that, by the way, regardless if they got hired or not. I paid them, because that's like, I'm very stubborn about that. Pay the people if you're making them do work for you during interviewing. But so I asked them to, in their writing, I said, I'm curious, how are you using AI? Right? Because I'm not going to pretend like they're not going to use it, because that's not how the world works now. So I asked them, how are you using AI? So two of them that responded, again, the work that they gave me was wonderful, but it, was very kind of what you would expect in terms of, here's how I used AI, great, very intelligent. But Maggie, the reason that I hired her and the reason that I knew she was the right fit was because when she submitted her project, she'd said, okay, here's what I did. She said, I went to your LinkedIn. I took a sampling of posts that you had written, right? And she said, then I wrote several, and she said, I did not use AI to write these. And then she said, and then I put them into ChatGPT, and I said, are these essentially, do they look written by the same person? Yeah. And she had all this info about how ChatGPT said, well, yes, but here's some differences, and here's some things you might want to change. And I thought, it's her. That's her. Because that was a mindset and an alignment, role strength alignment thing, not necessarily just the outcome. And so that made me go, oh yeah, it's Maggie for sure. And again, either of the other two were wonderful, would have been wonderful. But this was like, no, she's got something that is like very uniquely needed in a role like this. So again, ChatGPT, lots of cool ways to use it.
This is true. It's like full circle on how you were using ChatGPT to evaluate your book, and she did something similar. What a good telltale sign that she's the best fit for you for right now.
Yeah, she's so wonderful.
Good. Amazing.
But you can't have her. I won't send you her.
No,
I won't send you her info.
Post her information for sure. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your generosity today. It's been so fun. We will put the link to your book. Tell us the name of it again.
The Congruent Leader. Can't believe it. Yeah.
The Congruent Leader. We'll put that in the show notes prominently, so you can go grab it on Amazon. And is there anything else you want to share as we're wrapping up here today?
Oh my goodness. I just love you. Thank you so much for having me on, and for the work that you do. And I benefit from you on a weekly basis. So it's been just awesome to be back.
Amazing. Well, I love you too. And so happy that you're here, celebrating you on the book launch. And I look forward to having you again on the podcast soon, hopefully.
Let's do it.
All right. Thanks, LeAnne.
Thanks, Melisa.
Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melisaliberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.